Good job. You did a good job. You did a real good job.
Great high five.
Oh. Ours was a palming.
It was soft.
I quite like the soft. I needed softness right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mad. Last time I played the game would have been when we released it on PS4 and we moved it over to Unreal Engine 4. I think I played the game through then, and I've not really touched it since. I've watched a few people play it over the years.
I kind of was briefly aware of the reviews coming in. I was checking the review scores and things like that. It got a really high Metacritic. It got 82 Metacritic on release. And so we knew we had made something good because of the critical reception. But I wasn't able to go back and look at that game for many, many years. Like for 10 years, essentially, I've not been able to look at it.
It's been quite nice to just remember all those things that we put in. A lot of teams would have quit way sooner. And I'm not saying we're super special, but we at the very least saw it through.
I think these reflection moments where you can see as a team how far you've come, but also it really gives you that opportunity that you get somewhat rarely with games where you actually get to look back and appreciate the things that you did. Quite often those things can kind of just get, kicked down the road forever.
People remember it. I also had a pitch with an angel investor, and we were talking about a game that I was working on, and they were like, "Oh, I didn't know you worked on ETH1 as well." It's like, well, obviously they'd remembered it, and then I think I kind of looked at him and I was like, "I think we pitched to you for the UK Games Fund back in the day. I think you were on the panel then," and he's like, he remembered it. Yeah, so it was quite interesting.
What did it feel like when you guys moved into this space? Because you were just developing from like bedrooms, as far as I know it, like working from home.
We moved in pretty early in development for me because I was here before anyone.
It was pretty cool though, wasn't it, all being in the space? Because before then, the only group ones we'd done was at your flat, wasn't it?
Yeah, we're on Google Hangouts, weren't we?
The speed of development also like skyrocketed, didn't it? Like I remember like feeling so energized and so much was happening.
So I was in that room.
That was at our studio.
Well,
so that wall, we
so-
knocked through that wall. That didn't
So
always
it was
be
closed.
that was a
So
that was a solid
closed.
wall.
When we were making Ether,
just there,
it
wasn't
was like Liz the Potter's pottery studio. And basically it was leaking. It was like an old warehouse that wasn't usable. And after that, it got made into an art gallery. And then when they left, we were like,
We built that room, that meeting room, and also knocked through that wall. That was just a big open room that was echoey and everything.
We made the
But it only
occupation
went
in
to
this
there.
space. So we were still in here for that.
You were still
Yeah.
okay.
So however many of us in this room.
Halfway through the occupation is when we went through that.
I remember, so building lighting on these levels used to take like 3 hours or something like that, or 4 hours. And I remember like sometimes when we were like really wanted to hit a goal for like, if it was like we were going to a show or something, I can't remember, but me and OJ would stay here quite late. And I have videos of OJ having naps on these
Like
chairs.
tag in and tag out and then go
Yeah, we
away.
would tag each other in and out.
That's all I knew of OJ when I started.
Yeah,
Because
you'd
you just had Molly.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
done.
So you were just, every chance you get, you're like, okay, I'm just going to rest for half an hour.
So easy to sleep
Just
then anywhere.
sleep. Yeah. Amazing.
It was late 2015 that I joined the studio, and that was after they'd done the initial release, and then they'd done the PS4 release as well, the redo. So I worked on a patch for, I think, the last patch that Ether would have had. Not 100% sure if that patch ever shipped, but I definitely worked on some code for it. Working on any kind of creative product like that, it's a little bit like going to war or something like that. It's vaguely traumatic and a bonding experience. And you probably end up developing lots of internal terminologies and particular ways of working, and you kind of just learn how people are, and you kind of just establish norms. And obviously, as anyone coming in from the outside, you have none of that, right? Particularly with the studio, this is their first game, they've kind of come just out of student mentality, where you're just kind of doing things, you're giving it whatever it takes, kind of, and you're just making it work. And I think that a lot of that mentality kind of persisted throughout our second title, which is awesome because I think there's a definite kind of energy that comes from that kind of thing. But I think that kind of stuff does lead to people working too hard because it's like, it's a passion project, right? And everyone just wants to make it work. And as soon as you have, 5 people just giving it everything, then whoever is, you know, the remaining 3 people are like, suddenly they probably begin to feel a bit like, oh, I probably need to be working as much because I don't want to be the one who's not trying, kind of thing. And the industry perspective, it can end up in quite a toxic situation. Some of us starting to think about families, some of us already had kids by that point, and we definitely want to be a place that it's not just about making the games, it's also about making the studio. Your studio is kind of a second tier product, right? Like you think of the products as just the thing that people are coming and playing, but actually your product is also who you are, and if you want to make awesome games in the future, you have to be somewhere that people want to join.
It's really important to have internal processes in place, because if you have a fixed structure, people know how to estimate their time a little bit better. So we introduced something called OKRs and cycles at the end of the occupation. So our cycles are always 7 weeks long. They always go throughout the year, and we have 7 cycles in a year. So 7 times 7 is 49. And then we have a 1-week summer break, and we have a 2-week winter break at Christmas. So, you know, with those 3 extra weeks on top of the 49, that makes a 52-week year. We've been doing that since 2016 or 2017 now. So we've kind of got into that process of knowing what the length of the cycle is, people understanding how much they can get done in the cycle, and it also gives us a scaffolding to build the games around. And especially for a small team, it's not a small team really just stretching themselves thin or just really just taking everything out of themselves like we did on a game like Ether 1. It's just being smart in our process and our techniques, which then can result in these larger game experiences.
You learn constantly, like from Ether 1 through to Occupation. Like, we made mistakes in Occupation that we've then fixed for daily review and everything. So it's just making sure that you reflect on everything you've done and you learn from what didn't work. Make sure that you're very honest about that. And I think it's something that we've been able to do quite well over the years, and be honest with ourselves and make sure that we put everything in place to make sure it doesn't happen again.
I didn't even know how people would enjoy it. Literally, we were blind to that.
It was so hard.
I think that's what makes it special, though, doesn't it? Is I was saying before, but when you don't know quite what you're doing, which is definitely true, and you just put in all of your passion, heart, and care into it, and riding those ups and downs, and they all exist within it. It all gets bundled, packaged together as a communication out to other people. That's what it is, really. So. You know, it's not intellectualized in any shape or form, is it?
Especially when it's
just thought about. It was felt through.
Yeah. And when it's 5 people doing it, it's not like this machine that's making this thing. It's like it was just 5 of us out of uni trying to make something cool. Like it was.
Well, they're really learning every day, you know.
I think you can tell that as well. Like you can tell it's 5 people. You can tell it's like
6.
small. 6, sorry.
You were there as well.
Heart is the right word, right? The game was built with heart and love. You know, everybody involved in the project, you know, brought that to the kind of table. Personal experiences were put into the kind of game. You know, it transcends, right? It transcends from the creatives through to the audience. You know, so people are playing the game, and because I think we placed all of our hearts and our love. And you know, the creativity is almost intellectual, right? Okay, it's like, how do we make something good, right? Okay, but I think the interesting thing about Ether 1, it was more than just that. It really was passion and personal experience, lived experiences that we were placing into that game, and so it communicates through, right? Okay, you know, to that kind of audience. The topic is memory, right? Okay, and so that's how we all were then, and that is all that group experience has been put into a bundle of a game that is put out there. So if you play the game now and you feel the things that we wanted people to feel, that's very much the team's experience at that point in our life that still exists within that kind of title.
What did you think when you were playing it? Do you remember?
No, I honestly don't. There's bits from that I remember, but a lot of it is like...
Lost in time.
Have you not played it since?
No.
Oh wow.
No.
Because you'll have played the whole game.
You did, yeah. You and Vicky did.
You'll have played the whole game.
Because I also remember the day that you and Vicky came, and Vicky ended up like crying at the ending, and I was like, wow, like what did we do?
Yeah, I wish you could kind of bottle what makes that, like, if you deleted one element of that ending and it stopped making somebody cry or emote, what would that element be? Like, how could you say, okay, that and that, that's how you get.
I think it's different things to different people as well.
Yeah.
People notice different details. I was saying this before to Ash. It's like I think if you care about all those little details and you put everything into it, I think people just feel it. It's not even a quantifiable or like, oh, this thing. It's not like a recipe or anything like that. It's just like there's just something in there that you can sense where it's just like, whoever made this deeply cared about this thing.
You can't analyse it, I don't think, you know. It's very difficult, at least it's very difficult to analyse, right?
Yeah.
You know? I think right now, if you want to do something, if you want to set up a studio and do your own thing, I think it's important to figure out what the scope of what you want to kind of create is kind of early. And I definitely would start smaller rather than larger. It's very easy to have these grand ideas of what we want to create. My advice to any independent developer is make games and get games out, you know, so that you can learn from those experiences. Because without a doubt, I think Ether 1's development cycle was quite long for a first game, you know, but the learning point is, the journey was a learning point obviously, but getting the game out and understanding, you know, how people are interacting with it and how people are finding it, whether they're finding it fun or what bits that aren't finding it fun, that's like the real crux of kind of learning to then get better and do it again, right? Try and think small, try and think high quality, make it with people that you trust and care about, you know, don't over-intellectualize what you're building. If you're passionate about it, follow that kind of passion.
Because we self-published Ether 1, it means that whenever we put the game on sale or we do any updates or whatever, all that revenue comes back to the studio, and the long tail is something that, if you care about the longevity of a studio, I think that's something you want to be thinking about, because the more ownership over your IP and the revenue, that helps sustain later down the year, and the more titles you can then build up and the more platforms you can release on, it just really helps build a larger foundation for a studio. So that's very much the intention that we making moving forward, you know, getting Ether 1 out onto more platforms than we haven't released on yet. It's trying to pick our battles as a small team and where to spend our time and energy. You know, we weren't able to do that between Ether 1 and The Occupation because we had to go straight onto the next game because we didn't have loads of income from Ether 1. It was just, you know, we have enough to sustain us moving forward into the next game. Same with The Occupation to Conway. But then the more that you build your portfolio of games and, you know, you start adding more developers to the team slowly, you then can balance multiple different projects. So it's definitely an internal focus for us right now.
I think an Ether 2 would be really interesting, whatever that would be.
I would love to revisit.
Just the themes at play there, and I know that story is told. Like that story is told.
I've thought about it over the years. Pete, we've had a couple of conversations, haven't we, Pete? Quite well. I think we come back to it like once a year, and then move on to other things. So.
Yeah, we always do as well.
Just you float things around. There was so much backstory in that game, and there's so many different other characters we never told stories of. You know, I've always been fascinated by Thomas's father's story as well. Like, people don't end up like that because they haven't had a life, right? Do you get what I mean? There's more to a lot of things in there somewhere. But I also think, coming back to that kind of idea of like relevancy to the creators, you kind of would want to have that relevancy in a sequel, I think. So it's kind of bringing the life experience of
10 years on,
yeah,
kids.
10 years on, kids, yeah, exactly, you know, like all that sort of stuff, you know, like channeling that into would be really relevant, I think.
This game is like, what, 10, I mean, the oldest version would be 12 years old now. It's actually really quite a nice moment to be like, wow, we didn't do a bad job. That was actually, there's some really good stuff there, and some of it has really aged quite well.
The art style of the game, it wasn't chasing the realism and the specs of new machines and the boundaries of what graphics could do. It had a beautiful painterly art style that was unique in its own thing, and I think for that, almost in itself has been one of the reasons it hasn't aged, because when it came out it wasn't trying to be current.
Makes me really proud of the team, the studio. Everyone sacrificed so much. It wasn't just a personal sacrifice, it was the whole team making sacrifice across the board. And even with each subsequent game, people take on a lot of ownership and responsibility, and it's definitely growing a team and having areas of responsibility has been a really fulfilling thing. And also seeing the developers that I've worked alongside for 10 or 11, 12 years, seeing how they're growing as people and growing as developers, and just we've got a really good culture at the studio of everyone kind of being friendly and warm, but also just really caring about the work. I think that shows through in our work as well. And I'm kind of looking forward to even doing that for future games down the line. It kind of really, no matter what the day-to-day looks like and how chaotic it can be and all the different incoming things that you got, especially as a small team, there's so many different things going on. And it can be hard to be reflective. But like booking out this time in our calendar and just saying, no, we're just going to sit down and play a game that we released 10 years ago and just making that space to reflect.
We're just going to keep leveling up. There's no hopefully about it. We have to, like, we absorb it. We absorb the media all the time, and we're just constantly trying to find ways to tell better stories. That's our drive.
I think we're all different people to we were 10 years ago. Who isn't, right? But at the same time, I don't like work here day to day anymore, right? But sometimes I will leave and I'll come back and 6 months have gone by and I'll just be popping by like I am today. I'm like, hey everybody, how you doing? And it's that kind of nice camaraderie where it's like I never left, and I can just walk in and be like, hey, how's everybody doing? It's really great. I love that.
Once we released and then we ended up getting the PS Plus deal and like a bit of money came into the studio, I remember I got enough money to buy a car. And I bought my first car with it and my lessons, and that was like, well, actually, the game's given us that. Like, at least that was worth it. I'm incredibly proud of the fact that, like, through that, like, we built a studio. Like, that's the main thing. Like, we always had that in the back of our heads. Like, we're making this game, but we're building a studio, and that's what we wanted to do. Like, we wanted to be able to sort of control our fate in that sense, and have our own development studio. And I just get to come in and work with people I love, people I've gone through really tough and, character building experience with, learn from the mistakes and pass that on to new developers that we have here. That's my favorite thing about Ether, is the fact that it made White Paper Games ultimately.
Looking back and making Ether and then now sitting here playing it with the new staff, it's humbling in a way. It's really nice because they get to see the start of everything and where it all came from. It wouldn't feel right without them sharing all this experience, because we're just a huge family here, and they want to see like what the previous game was and what it meant to us and what it meant to the fans, and pushing forward what we can all then create together as a family.
Let's go make on to the next game.
Oh, spoilers.
Was that on the stream?
No, it isn't. On the camera.
Oh God.